explore the notion of home, what defines home, and what are some factors that make you feel at home, as well as some places that we identify as home.
So today we're gonna first talk about our backgrounds, where we grew up, and where we actually felt like we were home, and how our sense of belonging was shaped by external and also internal factors. So this is Iris and Jiyeon today, and we're gonna have an awesome conversation today, and hopefully also have you in our conversation as we're gonna share our ideas, and you're gonna also pitch in, and if you have any more to share with us, please.
Yeah. And we hope to get you thinking as well. So maybe Iris could go first on what kind of places she's lived in her past 20x years of life, and where she felt at home.
So I was born and raised in Korea my whole life before I went to college. Like, I knew I wanted to go to a college abroad, and I was lucky enough to go to a college in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and my campus was situated in Abu Dhabi, Sadia Island, and it was a beautiful resort island with the beaches and the museum. It was quite bougie. But we were students, so we wouldn't be able to afford everything, but we were given a lot of opportunities to really get a taste of that bouginess, so I'm grateful. But I also stayed in New York for a year, a whole academic year, and also I spent a summer in New York doing research at a lab.
Yeah. And that's a very global experience, I guess. Have you lived anywhere other than Korea before you came to NYU?
I don't think so. I mean, I just traveled around. But but inside Korea, and I mean Korea's only South Korea, so it's only half of the whole North and South Korea. Yeah, I would my family would move around a lot because my dad is a civil engineer. So every time his construction project ends, he would have to be transferred to another location with the new project. And sometimes we would move with my dad, sometimes we wouldn't, but I would say I moved around 10 to 11 times before I turned 18. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So although it was within a country, you still, I assume you had some shifts in where you associate to at home, right?
Yes. I wouldn't be able to just pinpoint one place or one house or neighborhood as my home when I'm in Korea, but I just really think my the Seoul city itself is my home. That's how I think of it now.
Oh, I see. So you did move around a lot, but it was all within Seoul?
Not all within Seoul, but it was most of the times in Seoul or the peripheries of Seoul.
I see. Got it. And as for me, I grew up I would say I lived in Korea and spent a chunk of my life in Korea, or at least I spent the bulk of my life in Korea, but I lived in Boston as a kid from around 3 years old to 6, 7-ish. I lived in Massachusetts, and then I came back to Korea and basically stayed in the same neighborhood for a good amount of time. I would until I went to college. So that was from 2003 to whenever I left for college, 2017, I think. So yeah, I couldn't think of anywhere else as home, especially growing up as a teenager and in my adolescent times, because it was not only Korea that I associated to as home, but also a very specific neighborhood, but not just a neighborhood, but also this exact apartment building and this exact floor. So I guess in that sense, we do have a similar upbringing, you know, both spending the majority of the time of our childhood, teenage years in Korea, but her having a more broad idea of where home is, but me, like, I could pinpoint the map, like on the on
one dot.
location. A dot. It's a dot. Yeah. But then I moved out from my home for college in New York City. And
best decision
immediately, like my concept of home switched. It didn't even take a whole semester. Like by fall break, I knew that this is where my new home is. This is where I belong. Family, new family, you know, friends. For me it was just I did not feel homesick at all, because that's when I redefined where home is. And right now, unfortunately / fortunately, because I'm reunited with my family, but I relocated to Korea just temporarily during the COVID breakdown. And I've been in Korea for the past half year, since May.
I have a similar situation with Jiyeon right now. I also came back to Korea amidst all the pandemic going on last April. And right now I've graduated with my last semester being online. And I'm trying to look for a job in Korea. Yeah.
I see. So I actually want to talk a bit about, before we, you know, like tell people where we feel at home, I kind of want to talk about our decision to come back to Korea during the pandemic times, because I think that's it was an interesting time, and a time where we had to make a quite a turning point decision. What do you call it? Milestone? Benchmark? Milestone? Yeah, like it was a milestone for a lot of people, but we also... No, milestone means 목표 달성. 뭐지? Like a time in life where you have to make a important decision. It's like a turning point.
Yeah, I think it's just a turning point. No?
I think it was quite revealing to a lot of people, because they had to make a decision in a pressured environment where to go during that pandemic, at least for college students, or for a lot of people who work in the workforce, are in the workforce too, right? Like we had to decide where we are gonna go in a global pandemic, where we are forced to evacuate our current nests and find somewhere that we feel most comfortable, but also safe in terms of physical safety and just emotionally, mentally as well, right?
I think healthcare was the primary reason why I came back to Korea from Abu Dhabi when the pandemic broke out. I mean, Korea wasn't in a great state, I think in January and February, and I remember a lot of countries closing down tourist visas for Koreans, and I was planning to go to Turkey for my spring break, but that got canceled because of that. But,
because of your Korean passport.
Yeah, like back then, like January, February, I think that was when COVID was only spread out in
East Asia.
Yeah, East Asia, Iran, and I think Italy too. But soon COVID was just rampant like everywhere. And Korea actually became one of the safest countries, and one of the countries that were, I guess, evaluated to have a better control over that pandemic. And that's why I decided to come to Korea. But I was very sad at that point, because I never really thought of Abu Dhabi as my home until that semester, like the start of that semester. Like I started running and I joined the track and field team at school, and I was like, even though I lived on Sadia Island for 2 years, I think I've never really explored before that semester. And I think I was beginning to believe that the Sadia Island could actually be my second home. But then because of the pandemic, I had to leave, which was very sad. I remember just like thinking to myself, just the night before my flight, I was like, is today gonna be the last day that I have in Abu Dhabi? Like that thought just hit me, and it scared me so much. But I was like, oh, like I'm gonna be here next semester, so don't worry. But turns out I stayed in Korea for my last semester. So that was kind of a bummer. And yeah, I think those kinds of unexpected situations also really impact your definition of home as well. Because you also have to prioritize your health and like security.
Yeah. I remember it being an extremely tough decision to make, because I mentioned a bit briefly earlier that I felt at home immediately when I went to college in New York City. I found my family, home away from home. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I just immediately clicked with my clique, because I think it's because of the people that made me feel at home there. But that's why I didn't really leave the States since I've moved to New York for college. I didn't go back to Korea, unlike most international students, I guess. For the summer, let alone winters, sometimes I would just stay in New York City. But then in 2020, around March, when the school had declared that this is a global pandemic and all students must evacuate, I really I couldn't go back home. Like, I couldn't go back to Korea, because that was not an option for me. I didn't want to go back. It felt like I was moving backwards. It felt like I was it didn't feel like the place that I would want to go back to. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you've outgrown?
Definitely. I felt like I've outgrown the country. Like, I mean, it might sound a bit arrogant to say, but I like to explore new places, and I have a very, very strong sense of exploration.
Right.
And for me to go back to the same country that I've already spent a good 18 years of my life in, it felt like just going back to the same old routine that I could almost predict and know what the next few X days of my life would look like, because I knew exactly where I was going to. I knew that dot on the map where I was going back to. So I decided to stick out. I decided to just stay in the university dorm. I sent a what's the name? Not a protest. What's petition. I sent in a petition to stay, and luckily it got approved. So my plan was to stay there. But then New York City became one of the most dangerous hubs and the biggest epicenter of the pandemic. And that's when my parents were, fortunately enough, I had very understanding parents who are supportive of whatever decisions I make. And they were fully supportive of it until New York City had just like tens of thousands of deaths per day. And that's when, my mom said, you have to move out of New York City. I don't care where, but just get out of there. And I had an option to go to California, where my friend kindly offered to stay at her home with, or in New Hampshire, where my uncle lived. But I thought, well, at that point, I don't think anyone had predicted that it would go on for this long, but I didn't want to be a burden to my entire friend's family. So I just moved into my uncle's place in New Hampshire, Portsmouth, which was a very tiny city. Now there, I